11, I think. We've already been doing this for 11 weeks. I wouldn't say much if I was killed. Well, maybe that's just you. Teach me the goodest words. Yes, so today, an interesting topic, compound sentences, which means basically, like you can see here, many clause, which is we're no longer limited to just having one clause in our sentence, which we were until now, but rather we can have as many as we like. Of course, you're not going to learn every way of combining clauses today, but we're going to learn some of them. Namely, let me erase some of this stuff. Mainly, we are going to learn... Oh, sorry, I forgot. The music is still way too loud. But let me fix that real quick. There we go. There we go. That's the usual volume that we go at. So, the main... I'm thinking of introducing you like two main ways, two words that you can use today, mostly to explain reasons for why something happened. Causality, causation. And those two words will be, ironically, kara again, which we had last week, I think, or the week before that, I think, kara, when we talked about dates and times. This is a different kara, though. So we have kara again, and we have made. Sorry, node. See, now I'm going back into the past as well. No, kara and node. So these are the two that we're gonna learn about today. Kara and node. And then maybe we'll learn about another one, depending on how long I take for these two. I want to give them the time they deserve, because I mean, you know, I respect the grammar. Alright, kara node. So these are two very, very important and very, very interesting words. You were faced with oyobi. Yes, oyobi. That's a bit more formal. These are two very good words. So what do these mean? Well, both of these sort of boil down to a because kind of thing. Because. But now, of course, it's not as easy as just learning the translation of these. We also need to learn about positioning and like how we put them in a sentence, where, and you know, how we make a proper sentence with these words. So basically, kara and node are both used to argue reasons. What? A mortal idiot. Thank you for the follow. That's an interesting name. These both are used to express reasons why something happens. Causes, like causality. Because, right? Because has literally the word cause in it. So there you go. Go figure, huh? So that's how it goes. Now, how do we use these words? So, the basic structure is going to be something like this. Let me make some space here that I can show you. Kara node. So I'll show you the basic structure, then we'll quickly talk about what the kind of the difference between kara and node would be, and then we'll look at a bunch of examples. I have a link here from Tai Kim's guide that we can use, which just has a bunch of sentences. Kara no Nihon no kara no warai yogo. マジですか? 見たことないですよ、そういうの。Kara no. It's like, and then. I haven't seen that. So, basically, any, Kurama-san, konnichiwa. When you will see a sentence like that, you'll have two clauses. Namely, you'll have the cause. Okay, so you have some sort of cause. Cause, reason. Some sort of cause, reason. Then you'll have kara node, either one. Kara node. And then you'll have consequence. Consequence. Okay, so what that means is like, well, thing A causes B, right? It's kind of like causality, like kind of logic, right? So A happens, and that will cause B to happen. A lot of da kara. Yeah, you hear that a lot. That's true. So we'll have a clause, a cause, and a consequence, and both of these will be clauses. So, not to confuse cause and clause. Taco, hey. So this will be clause. Okay, clause 1, and this will be clause 2. So this is where sort of the exciting thing. Why did I make a question mark for 2? This is where things get exciting. 配信がなので、そうね、挨拶をしに来た。 So Clam already gave us a very nice example there. 配信が始まったので挨拶をしに来た. And what's the, again, to explain real quick, a clause is usually defined by having like a main verb. Like most clauses revolve around like a main verb. But if we want to have more than one main verb in our sentence, we would have to use multiple clauses. Just like in Clam's sentence there, we have two main verbs, or rather we have two clauses, each with their respective verb. In the first one, it's hajimaru, to begin. And in the second clause, it would be kuru, to come, right? To come somewhere, to go somewhere, basically, to arrive somewhere. So that's the useful thing about it. We can now make a lot more complicated sentences than we could before. And we will learn much more about how we can link clauses up in the future. This is just one way. There's a myriad of ways in which you can link clauses, because clauses can be related in many different ways. Today we're going to talk mostly about like causality. So one clause sort of leading to the other or causing the other to happen. Just like here, we have a cause, a reason, then we have kara no de, and then we have a consequence. So it's fairly straightforward. 勉強します。明日テストがありますから。そうね。So we have these two clauses. I wonder, maybe Jess is going to combine them into one now and see. If you do that, then you're way ahead of us, because then you already know everything. So, how do we do this? Now, alright, I said that I would quickly talk about the difference. So, the main difference between kara and node here, I wish, well, maybe by the end of the lesson you'll be able to do it. So, the main difference between kara and node is that essentially they can be used very, very similarly, like without much meaning difference at all. It's just that node can sound a little bit more formal, and it's a little bit more written language. So let's see, like, so this is more a tendency. はじめまして、こんにちは。はい、こんにちは。ふわりさん。よろしくお願いします。Kara has a little bit, so this is more a tendency. I'm not saying you're not allowed to use this when writing. It's totally okay. It's just a little bit of a tendency. So kara. So, well, it's like maybe... I'll just make like a little like minus, how should I say? Because it's like, if I say this is informal, that would be kind of a wrong thing. But let's add it here and say like more formal, a little more formal, a little more written language. There's like a good shorthand for language. I guess lang is fine, unless it's maybe more spoken. And their positioning is a... Wow, did you hear that? I made like the whistling sound with my teeth. Their positioning is a little different. So, positioning... Not in as much as they show up in different places, but they can be put after different words a little bit differently. So what do I mean with that? Mainly, right, the main difference is that node can be attached to nouns, can be attached to nouns with na. So here na shows up again. Our good old friend na, different setsuzoku. Yeah, it's a little like they're kind of different words, but they're very similar. So node can often be attached to nouns using na. So you get nanode. So it will look a little bit like this. Nanode. So if we have a noun here, we can say nanode. We cannot say noun kara, because if we say noun kara, we would mean from that noun. So then its meaning would change. So we cannot indicate reasoning saying like because it's a dog with just kara, but we could using dakara. Okay, so that would be a little bit of the difference here. So here we could add dakara. So ironically, these two aren't actually all that unrelated, as we've of course discussed in the past. Oh, I'm so sorry about the noise. Da and na aren't of course all that different, because they are in fact the same thing, just conjugated differently. Here it's just its normal form, da, and here it's its attributive form. But that would be like one difference. And don't worry, we'll look at examples later. Actually, we might start looking at examples fairly soon. So, this is kara no de. In many cases, when you just have a verb, they can be almost interchangeable, except that using no de would make it sound like maybe a tiny bit more formal. Jesus, now people are yelling outside. What is this place? So, let's actually grab a sentence. There we go. There, this one's good. All right. So, right, let's see a few different examples of what to put kara no de after. So let's start with this. This isn't, we will have a sentence with an adjective. Yeah, Swiss yelling intensifies. Yes, and we're usually such quiet people. I don't understand. Let me see. Oh, be careful with that. So, we could have an example with an adjective. Okay, so let's see adjective first. So if we want to say because it is an adjective, like because it is some attribute, because that's what adjectives are, right? They're attributes, like loud, for example. We can use kara just right away if we wanted to. If we wanted to, we can just be like, you know, yeah. So we could straight up just add kara after the adjective. That's that is allowed. So let's do an adjective first. Yeah, and with the na-adjectives, we'll look at it later. But let's do, because it is loud here, so loud would be like urusai. So we could do like koko wa. Koko wa. Koko means here. Koko wa urusai. Why did I have to think so long about urusai? Koko wa urusai. Now, this itself could be a finished sentence, an informal one, but it's a finished sentence, because remember, we talked about this in the past. Adjectives can act as predicates. So this is a perfectly fine sentence. Adjectives can act as predicates. What does that mean? They can act in substitute or in place of the part of the sentence that usually would contain the verb. So a sentence needs to end in a predicate usually for it to be a proper finished sentence. Predicate is in most cases a verb, but not always. In Japanese, the predicate is almost integrated into the adjective. So keiyoshi can act as basically, I think jutsugo would be the Japanese word for that. But again, to remind you, adjectives indeed can function as finished predicates. And then if you want to make it polite, I would love to reverse some actions, but it seems to not let me do that. Oh, I know why. Because Windows. If you want to make this polite, we can add this. Just the polite copula, and now it is a polite sentence, so that works just fine. Urusai. But that's not what we want. We don't want to be finished here. We want to say because it is loud. So what can we do? Well, we can actually just add kara. It's as easy as that. Koko wa urusai. So this is how I encourage you to think about these things, is you have two disconnected sentences, at least when you first get started. Of course, as you confess, I was distracted by looking in my dictionary. Don't worry too much about it. We'll talk in very detail about just this one sentence and as we move on. So this is how I encourage you maybe to think about it when you get started, is you have these two these two disconnected clauses. One of them here is it's loud. And then you can think about what it being loud or just general noise could cause to happen. For example, it's loud, I don't like it. So in English, very simply, we can say, because it's loud, I don't like it, for example, right? That would be one example of how we can connect these two clauses into one sentence. Very simple. I think the song lyrics is compound sentence. Mentioning dakara reminded me. Yeah, so these are very common structures. So here, since this is our reason, our cause, right? This is our cause. This is the cause. It's loud. That's the cause. It causes something else. This is where we'll add the kara. And now, what do we want the consequence to be? Well, it's kind of up to us. But in this case, I'm just gonna go with what I have here in the notes. I'm also, again, I'm referencing Tae Kim's guide here, just because it's already handily has a bunch of sentences that I can use. So we have our cause, now we need to find our consequence. So what does this point to? Well, for example, we can very simply say, あまり好きじゃない。あまり好きじゃない。So, write that down. あまり. That's a mo. The keen-eyed among you may have spotted that. あまり好きじゃない. And I'll use kanji here because might as well use some kanji every now and again. あまり好きじゃない. There we go. 好きじゃない. Thank you for the follow. Pokzamulti. Wow. Thank you so much. Follow arigatou gozaimasu. So what do we have? We have two clauses. Because remember, a clause is basically defined by its predicate or its verb. But I should say predicate because, again, here we don't essentially have verbs. We have predicates, right? We have a copula here. Here being the negative copula. And we have an e-adjective here acting as the two predicates. So these are completed clauses. Like, these are both valid clauses on their own. Like, these could be finished sentences on their own, right? We could isolate them and then be like, oh, cool. 8 months! Look at that. That's like almost a baby. Welcome, Moncast, yeah. Welcome back. So, again, we could isolate these and they would be perfectly fine on their own. That's usually a good way of recognizing a clause is you look at it and you're like, could this be alone and make sense? And if you're like, yeah, this kind of could be on its own and makes sense, then commonly that could be its own clause. So again, we have the two predicates. We have the urusai, the e-adjective acting as the predicate, and the janai, the negative copula, which is, if you want to call it a verb or a predicate or whatever, it's the copula. We talked about this in, geez, so many subs today. X also 8 months in the same minute. Wow. How do I deserve this? Thank you so much. Welcome back. So desu ne. So we have the two separate clauses, clause 1 and clause 2, and we combine them. They can be related in some way. In this case, clause 1 literally is the cause of something, and clause 2 is the consequence. So let me write that down as well. Consequence. Okay, consequence. Not very great handwriting. 面白いから好きです。そうですね. That's another good example. Yeah, 面白いから好きです. Yeah, that's good. So, and then as far as punctuation goes, the first thing that I can tell you is that commas in Japanese are almost always optional, but they can help with legibility. So in this case, very often there will be a comma here, though it's not required. What's that? どん底だから上がるだけ compound sentence. Yeah, だから上がるだけ. Yeah, that's a compound sentence because we have two clauses there. One using da, the copula, and the other one is agaru. To how te form connects verbs, iaje kara no de connects sentences. Well, I wouldn't call them sentences because this is just one sentence, right? Like all this is one sentence, but it connects clauses. And essentially, te form also connects clauses, but not exclusively. It does other things too, but te form can actually be used to connect clauses as well. We're probably gonna do a te form episode 2 pretty soon to talk about stuff like that. Te form is very versatile, so we're gonna be talking more about it. So there you go. And again, about commas. So very often people might put a comma here, but it's not required. It's more of an optional thing, but it can help with legibility because in Japanese, the way you interpret commas is basically just as a little pause. So, ここはうるさいからあまり好きじゃない. It's just easier to read sometimes. Most of all, if the sentence is pretty short and you want to have this like distinction. For example, in your sentence, oh gosh, how do I, babe, that's OSJ. I don't know. I'm trying to see if there's like a word in there that I can read. But yeah, OSJ, in your sentence, a comma there could have been pretty good, but not required again. But because 面白いから好きです, because they have this 好きです at the end, which is sort of like, it's the consequence, the second part, the second clause. Sometimes separating that with a comma can make it like easier to read. But really, it's not wrong either way. it's specifically rock bottom. Yeah, donsoko with the don attached to it makes it like the very bottom, the rock bottom, basically. Yeah. ここはうるさいからあまり好きじゃない. So it's loud here because it's loud here, right? The because, and again, kara is basically a particle, so it goes backwards, right? Always think particles going backwards, right? So basically, this kara affects this clause in front of it because it is loud. あまり好きじゃない. I don't like it much. 日本語には接点に関する厳密な規則がないからみんながそうねみんなそれぞれの感覚で使用しているでしょう感覚で使用していますそうですね That's true So in Japanese there isn't really that strict there aren't really those like strict punctuation rules, so everyone's kind of like doing it by feeling. That's because the comma came at a weird point where the comma was sort of imported, but not really like integrated into the grammar that deeply. Why not both? 部屋を片付けてから。てから。てから is something different we'll talk about in the future. So here's our finished example with an adjective. Okay? そうね、しよう。This is with an adjective. So let's use something else, okay? Let's try and use a na-adjective instead, and I'll make it really, really simple, okay? I'll make it super simple and basically do the same sentence, but instead of saying because it's loud, I'll say because it's quiet, okay? So again, we're going to say the same thing, but instead of saying because it's loud, we're going to say because it is quiet. And we're going to have to change a little tiny bit about it. So, again, we'll start with ここは here. ここは And now quiet is, what's quiet? 静か, right? 静か, which is a na-adjective. And I can quickly also show you said na-adjective, which is 静か. 静か. So quiet, right? 静かにして. 静か. And I think I won't write the kanji for this because it's honestly too many strokes and I can't be bothered, but you can see it on screen here. And I encourage you to remember the kanji always. So there you go. 静か. 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 ここは静か. Now, the difference here would be that this, okay? ここは静か. Theoretically speaking, okay, if we're being very strict with our grammar, is this a completed sentence? No, it's not, okay? Again, if we're being really, really strict with ourselves, then this is not a completed sentence. ここはうるさい is kind of a completed sentence, but ここは静か, not really. But we're getting really, we're getting very strict here. A lot of people, Volpe, hey. A lot of people might say this is a completed sentence with an implied copula, okay? Like, sure, you can say it's implied. But purely grammatically speaking, na-adjectives still rely on the copula to build completed sentences. So ここは静か in its purest form isn't really a completed sentence, but ここは静かだ is, okay? That would be the difference between a na-adjective and an e-adjective in this case, is that e-adjectives may function as predicates, na-adjectives may not. They rely on the copula to do that. So only now is it, purely grammatically speaking, only now is it a complete sentence or a complete clause. So this would be valid if we put a full stop here and be like, ここは静かだ. It's quiet here, right? ここは here, 静かだ. It's quiet. But we don't want it to end here. We want to say because. And this is, once again, the da basically comes in once again here because we need it to be here before we can add kara. 静かだから. Okay, that would be the difference, right? We wouldn't say うるさいだから because remember, I told you this in the adjective episode, which would be, would it sound natural in speech without the da at the end? Yes, but not if you add kara. If you decide to add kara, you would have to have the da. No one would say ここは静かから. Well, at least it sounds a bit off. Like ここは静かだから is much better and certainly much more grammatical. If the sentence is over, then it could sound natural because often things are implied, and that does include copulas. 元気ですか? 元気だわ. again, in Japanese, almost anything can be implied. So you can imply copulas as well. You can be like, ここは静かね. Like something like that, right? ここは静か. So quiet. But you would still have an implied copula there, essentially. 幸せだわ。いいね. But for now, as far as correct grammar goes, you're relying on the da here to make this grammatical in most cases. 静かだから, again, because it's a na-adjective. I keep doing this. Na-adjective. Huh. Wait. Could we make another letter? I don't know who was here for my birthday stream, but I invented a new letter, which is a D and a G combined into one. D, G. Now you can write the word edge with one less letter. Isn't this very efficient? Look, I'll show you. You can write it like this. Edge. Amazing. Anyways. Lost, but I'll listen again later. Yeah, so maybe also the document will help. OSJ, thank you for the follow. So, since this is a na-adjective, we rely on this da, the copula, to make it a finished clause, and once it's a finished clause, we can add kara. So now it says, because it is quiet, right? Shizuka dakara, because it is quiet, and now we can say anything else, right? Amari suki janai, like before, same ending as before. Call me predictable, but, you know, deal with it, because we're going to use the same one as before. Amari suki janai. Suki janai. Janai. Amari suki janai. And once again, this clause, the same thing is true, because suki is a na-adjective. Jesus. Na-adjective, we rely on the copula to complete the clause. Here it's a negative copula, so even more so we need it, because suki on its own can never be negative. It can only ever be what it is. It relies on the copula for conjugation in the first place. Let's make a new letter for this situation. Yes. I should make a new one for adjective as well. So it would be like a DJ, right? This is a DJ, so adjective could now be spelled like this. Adjective. Much better. Pepper, hey. Why does it do that? Like it gives me the Windows bleep sound when I just go back. I don't understand. I have a question. 報酬とご褒美の違いは? 報酬 is more of a neutral word. It just means like compensation for some work or something you do. It's a reward for like bringing an object or a thing or whatever. 報酬. ご褒美 is more like you're treating someone, like you want to make them happy. ご褒美 is used for dogs, for example, when you have treats for animals or pets are ご褒美, etc. like that. 親戚, そうね. Is だから at the beginning of a sentence different from だから and differently? No, so that's something that we're also going to look at before the end of the lesson, is variations on this scheme. Because Japanese is flexible in its sentence structure, you can often move things around. So you can actually have like, you know, you can move things around a little bit. So starting a sentence with だから basically makes the previous sentence the cause. And then it gets a little bit weird of like, oh, okay, but like, is that really the start of the sentence? That's where the lines blur. Is there situations where it's correct to use both? Yeah, sure. But for example, I would never call dog treats like 報酬, because that sounds like the dog actually, like it sounds like there's some sort of interaction there. Like the dog, you told the dog, hey, bring me, like, I don't know, told the dog, hey, bring me my newspaper and I will reward you. And the dog was like, understood. And then he went and he got, and he's like, here's your like compensation or something like that. Sounds really weird. And then I wouldn't use ご褒美 when you're getting paid for delivering newspapers or something like that by someone. You sound a little weird there. So I have to add da to kara only when it's an adjective. That's kind of true, but I wouldn't think about it like that. You add da to the na-adjective itself. The da here is here because it's an adjective. So this stuff here kind of is a unit. So the copula da and na-adjectives are very closely related. Remember in the if you want, you can rewatch the second episode we did about adjectives, I think, or the third one. I think it was the third episode. Na-adjectives rely on the copula to be conjugated in the first place. Situation where it's used. Yes, I would agree. So here we rely, like, only because da is here is this even a completed clause, grammatically speaking. And then we can add kara because now it's a clause, and kara gets added to the clause. Kind of, right? That's sort of the way to think about it, I think. ここは静かだから it's quiet here. Because it is quiet here, あまり好きじゃない I don't like it much. And again we have kara added to the cause and then the consequence later. Okay. Now, as far as dakara at the start of a sentence goes, it's a little like saying something in English. You really not gotta watch all your episodes. Hey, thank you. There you go. Yeah, in any case, someone does want to go back, this would be the playlist on YouTube. Oh gosh, please send. I might have to restart my Stream Deck. Comma works in this case, in this one too. Yes, it does. JP101, I think. Yes, there you go. So this was a case for adjectives. We can also use node with these. So the meaning isn't much different. ここはうるさいのであまり好きじゃない sounds a little bit more formal. Maybe in written language you may prefer that one. So you would be like ここはうるさいので it's loud here because it is loud here. So I don't like it very much. あまり好きじゃない It's on YouTube. Yeah, it's on YouTube. I'm a little bit behind. I'm like 2 episodes behind. After this one will be finished, we'll be like 3 episodes behind, I think. This is a weekly thing I do here on Twitch. I also have a, I think, let me see, subdoc. I do have a sort of written summary for this. This is the first one, which is free for everyone if you want to check it out, if it helps. But the other ones are only for subscribers. I'm sorry. And I will be actually trying to catch up with those as well. Oh, it's work. I will get there though. So we can use node just in the same way. Just maybe it makes it sound like a little bit more formal, a little bit more like written language. We can just say like うるさいので urusai is a that's fine. Urusai. It's not too much of a spoken word. You can use it in writing. So this doesn't sound awkward actually. I wouldn't say うるさいので There we go. But what you can't do, okay? What you can't do, and this is where the difference comes in here, is you cannot say shizuka da node. You can never say da node, okay? Just because node works as a different word. Node kind of acts like a noun, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. You can't say da node, so you would have to say, this would actually be a little bit different with shizuka. So shizuka would actually be shizuka. You would just say node here. Shizuka node. Shizuka nanode. No, so you would say nanode. Shizuka. Shizuka. And then instead of saying da, you would say na. Nanode. So that would be the difference here, is that you would use na instead of da. Let me make that red. You would use na instead of da. Because again, node acts a little bit more like a noun. And yeah. Danoni was used former, but not today. That's interesting. Okay. So yeah, apparently you were allowed to use that, but don't use it in modern Japanese because your teacher will get mad at you. Because na is the connector. Yeah, so basically think of na as the copula that connects nouns together, or like noun-like things. It's a little bit hard to really grasp na in its entirety. But it will show up in like similar places. If you think about it, all the places that na shows up is basically when like an adjective is added in front of a noun, or like nouns are added to each other somehow. This na will kind of show up. So shizuka nanode. So that would be the difference, right? Urusai node, no thing in between. Just like we didn't have da here earlier, right? We didn't have dakara, we had urusai kara. And we had shizuka dakara. But now we have urusai node and shizuka nanode. Again, it probably takes a little bit of practice to get your head around that. But just think of it as, well, this is a na adjective. So with no de, we just have to use that property of the na-adjective that it uses na when it gets added in front of this noun. Which, now I don't actually know if this is true, but if I had to give you a reason why that is, it's probably because of no. No, whenever it shows up, acts very much like a noun, okay? Whenever no shows up, it either links two nouns, like if it's noun, no noun, then it links the two nouns together, okay? If it's not between nouns, it acts a lot like a noun itself, okay? It will often get added to verbs, just like nouns do, so you have verb no, and it will often get added after na. So if it's noun or na-adjective, right? If you have like na-adjective, it will often be the case that you have na and then no. Noun glue, kind of. How about あんなことやるのはダメですよ? So here you have no used to nominalize a clause. We shouldn't really go too deep into that yet. Nominalization is something that I want to talk about in detail when we get to it. So, but yes, in this case, no actually, and you can see no there is added after the verb. Kind of like you could a noun, right? Something like that. I'm starting to forget what nouns and verbs are. I explain it in the first episode, I think, but nouns are like name words, words that describe objects or concepts. They aren't properties and they aren't actions. Verbs are actions. すごく物分かりがいいので、そうね。何を言ってるもすぐ理解する。そうですか？名詞と動詞。一応ね。Okay, so that was it for adjectives. So let's look at what we can do with verbs, okay? This is not that much different, luckily. So let's look at verbs. So what we've done in the first example was we took adjectives and we made clauses with the adjectives, and then we said, okay, and now they cause each other. What's that? Is that gara? Gara ga karada kara karada ga. Wait, isn't that moroi? Is that moroi? Yeah, it's moroi. Interesting. Gara desu. Yeah, gara. Gara ga karada kara karada ga moroi. Interesting. I'll probably fully understand much later when I'm excited to understand the grammar of the song lyrics. Yeah, there you go. Let's look at verbs. So, maybe I can find despite. No. Doesn't have good examples here, so I'll make up my own. It is kara. Ha! I was fooled. It is kara. Shell, husk. With verbs, it's much the same story. So let's look at kara first. Let's do something like 勉強している. I'm studying, right? 勉強してる or 勉強している. 勉強. So you would have 勉強, which is a good verb, which means to study, right? 勉強する. Let me see if I can get that to look somewhat nice. I think then we have Q in here, something like that. Oh, sorry, it's actually this guy. 勉強. そうですね。こういう感じで。勉強. So this is 勉強. Try and remember that. I'll show you real quick too. 目論. 目論. So 勉強. 勉強. This is a good word. Remember this. Where did you see 書く as if? あ、これか. I think I... 目論. Interesting that... I think I saw that in Witch's House? Maybe? I'm not sure. Yeah, I think so. Dead Body. これは魔女の家をやった時に見たかも。見たかもね。I think so. Anyways, 勉強。勉強する means to study. So, let's do a sentence with I'm studying. 勉強している。勉強している. Don't think too much about why we use ている right now. We just use it, okay? And just think that it means I'm studying. I will actually explain ている in like probably the next episode of て form. Maybe we'll do transitivity before that and then lead into this. 勉強している. So this is our first sentence. And then something like that, like 時間がない. 時間が 時間がない which means I have no time, okay? 時間がない I have no time. So how could these two be related? Well, for example, お勉強して、そうね。勉強している時間がない These could be related, for example, saying like, because I'm studying, I have no time, right? Say like your friend is like, hey, you want to come to the movies? And you're like, no, I'm studying, so I have no time to do it, okay? Which is, of course, you realize already the same structure again, it's causality. Because one thing, the other thing. So here, how do we use kara and node to express this? Very simple. Very simple. We just add kara here. That's really all it is. You just go kara. 勉強しているから時間がない。Period. We're done. 勉強なんてしてないけど時間はない。そうですね。時間はとても大切な、なんていうか、資源 was it resource? やから目線の言い方が何か難しいですよ。Which one? Which one is 上から目線の言い方？勉強しているから because I'm studying, right? Because I'm studying this is the consequence right here, right? Or maybe I should make the arrow here. Because I'm studying 時間がない I have no time. やってるゲームで一次元の複数があったんだ。That's disturbing. 勉強しているから時間がない And to make things even easier for us, we can actually replace this with node seamlessly without having to change anything. So you might as well add node here and you don't have to change anything. 勉強しているので時間がない This is basically the same. Again, node is slightly more formal, so maybe if you're writing a formal text, choose node over kara here. There are even more formal versions which you could use, like tame, but let's not worry too much about that. In this case, this is about as close as it gets between kara and node as far as them being very similar is concerned. So this is like, here they are basically interchangeable. They're not that different. It's kind of like the difference between saying, because I'm studying, I have no time, or I'm studying, so I have no time. It's essentially saying the same thing. Like, there's not much of a difference there. And it's the same for kara and node in this case, where it's really the same. 勉強しているので時間がない except for like a slight difference in formality. Alright, so this is the easy case where you have verb, you can just add kara or node and it's totally fine. And remember, you need to use I didn't know about node. There you go. こんばんは。So you have node. ユーザーはすごく理解力がいいのでの言い方がいいかも。そうね。今日はそうこうすごくその今日の、話題についてその便利な文章がチャットに出てくるかもすごく適切な文そののでとからを使う文 because they are very common, so you will see this ので and から all over the place. So once again with verbs, okay, make sure it is the dictionary form or a sentence ending form of a verb. Real quick what that means. Okay, if we have verb plus kara, okay, for it to mean because, it has to be sentence ending form. Sentence ending form. What that means is it has to be like a dictionary form or like something that could be at the end of a sentence, okay? It has to do with this nature of the clause needs to be finished, okay? Like 勉強している is a sentence ending form because we could have a full stop there. So when you have this construction verb plus kara, for it to mean because, for it to be a causal clause, like a clause indicating causality, we rely on it being a sentence-ending verb. Again, it's not much too complicated. Just think about, could I have this verb in that form as it is at the end of a sentence? And if the answer is yes, then it probably means because. Okay? If the answer is no, it probably means something else. And we will talk about that. And we had the example earlier with te kara. So like, 食べてから. That is different, okay? 食べてから does not mean because eating, okay? It means something else. It actually means after eating. Because 食べて is not a sentence ending form. Not in its essence. Sometimes sentences do end in te form, but that's more like because there is an implied further clause there that will come after. 日本人は上からの話し方に気にしているようだけど、意味だけを教えて話するから何か問題わかりにくいでした。I feel like I'm not caught up with that discussion there in chat. ともかく犯人は、捕獲しないと。そうね。So again, remember for kara to be used as because, it has to be a sentence ending verb. And if you want to know what a sentence ending verb is, just ask yourself, could I have the end of a sentence after this verb and it would be perfectly grammatical? Then it's probably okay. Then it's probably because of that. Because verb, because it's because I'm running, because I'm sleeping, right? 寝ているから because I am sleeping. 寝ているから And that does include past tense forms, okay? So sentence ending forms can also be past tense. So let's make an example with neru, for example. Neru is a good one, right? So let's do a past tense. It's more natural here to say nete ita kara. So I'll use that. It's a little bit better instead of neta kara. Because neta would mean like you slept, but it's already done, like you're done. Anyways, we're going to talk about te iru in the future. For now, just take my time. Take my word for it that nete ita is a bit better in this case to say because I was sleeping. It's sort of like a past progressive tense. So let's quickly write this example. Nete ita. Nete ita. You can also say neteta. Nete ita kara. And that's also okay because nete ita, again, is a sentence ending conjugation. This could be the end of a sentence. Nete ita. I slept, right? I was sleeping. That's a sentence ending conjugation here. So this is indeed because I was sleeping. Okay, so this includes past tenses as well. Basically, time kara versus because kara. So kara has a bunch of different usages. The main difference here really with verbs is that the only other one you would see would be like this, right? And we're gonna probably talk about te kara again when I bring it up, but you could have this, nete kara. Nete kara. But this would not mean because sleeping, this would mean after sleeping. That's just how the grammar kind of works. Like if you have, so sorry for the noise. If you have te kara, means after that action. But if it's a sentence ending conjugation, like a past tense or dictionary form, then it means because of that action. Kara made. And then the other one, which we talked about last time, or the one before that, which is noun kara is usually marking a starting point. So if I say something like gakkou kara, right, it's a starting point. So if you have gakkou kara would be from school, right? Starting at the school. Gakkou kara. That's different. That's not the kara that we're looking at today. もう8時だから Yeah, and you can see だから and then 閉める versus 8時から仕事が始まる That's a very good example what Clam just posted. So, man, I am so sorry. It is so noisy. I feel every time I want to stream, everyone's just like, yeah, let's drive past Eve's window. It's like I put up a flag or something, like, go now. I'm streaming, come here. Everyone will hear you. So let's talk about really that bad. Yeah, it just kind of bothers me, car ASMR. So what Clam said, right? もう8時. Hope you can kind of read my squiggles, right? Wait, that was kind of ugly. もう8時だから. So this だから, again, da here is a copula. It's a predicate or a verb or whatever you want, right? だから, let's call it predicate to be, proper. だから, we have this predicate because. So this is a predicate and then kara. We know it's not a noun, right? The noun is toki, but then we have the copula to act as a predicate. So this is a completed clause. This itself is a clause. もう8時だ. It's already 8 o'clock. And now if we add kara, because it is already 8. But if we say if we take away the mo, it wouldn't really make sense. Mo 8時 kara, maybe it could make sense, but just to keep it simple, if we just had 8時まで, 8時 kara, that just means starting at 8. Okay, that's the difference between having dakara versus kara in this case. That's why it's so important that you differentiate. And we could even say, so this, right? This would also be a completed clause. This could be finished. 8時だ. Sorry, I should add the dak thing. 8時だ. It's 8 p.m. It's 8 o'clock, right? Voice is louder, so it kind of works out. That's good. 8時だ. It's 8 o'clock. So this is a finished clause, whereas this isn't really 8時. This is just a noun. So if we say 8時から, we would mean from 8 o'clock. And then if we wanted to say ので, we would actually also say なので. 8時なので. I should make it red. Same difference. You would say 8時ので is a bit weird. Like, usually you will probably not see this, right? This one, 8時ので, nah, probably not, right? This is not really proper. To be really proper, you would have to say なので. なので. Because this is not a verb, it's a noun. なので. なので. And now it makes sense because it is 8 p.m., 8 o'clock. Does that make sense? All right. からので. So we talked about verbs and like nouns again. To quickly go over nouns. This shouldn't take long at all. Nouns. Nouns just are very simple. You would have, with kara, you would always have noun dakara. Always. Okay? For it to be a compound sentence. Dakara, noun dakara. Because it is a thing. I should probably have the ka first, huh? Noun dakara. Or noun nanode. Those are like the proper versions of that, right? Noun dakara or noun nanode. Because it is noun or because it is a thing. For example, neko dakara, because it's a cat. Neko nanode, it is a cat, so, or because it is a cat. That would be like the proper way of doing it. And remember, noun node without the na isn't really proper, and noun kara usually will mean, I'm using a tablet. Noun kara usually will mean from that noun, from that word. If I say neko kara, that means from cats. So you could say neko kara inu made, from cats to dogs. I like anything, right? Something like that. Very different sentence at that point, so be careful. Okay, that's how you can combine things. Like with all these rules in mind, and I do think that especially for things like these, the written summary might be helpful to some of you, so I will try to catch up on my written summaries as soon as I can. But yeah, just keep in mind, like, maybe watch it again if you need to. I'll see that this upload is on YouTube soon-ish. It will be here on Twitch indefinitely, so don't worry about it. You can always rewatch it. But those are like the rules. And with these basic rules, knowing how to attach it to nouns, adjectives, and verbs, you basically have all your bases covered, and you should be able to do all kinds of causality sentences. Because this other thing happened. And then the only thing to keep in mind is that sometimes, and especially in spoken language, the order can be flipped. So you can have a sentence like あまり好きじゃないね。こううるさいから。So something like that, right? あまり好きじゃないね。こううるさいから。Like it's so loud, I don't like it. So you can kind of flip the order there, or you can say something like, and then someone brought this up earlier, you can sometimes have dakara at the end. You can sometimes have dakara at the start of a sentence, right? So someone might say something like blah blah blah. They're talking. They're like, oh, I didn't sleep much last night. Something like 今夜あまり寝なかったね. Like, I didn't sleep much last night. 加える is pretty good. 今夜あまり寝なかったね. Or 眠れなかった. I couldn't sleep much. And then they'll say, なんかこう頭痛があったから because I had a headache, right? They'll give the reason afterwards. They'll say a consequence first, and then they'll add the reason afterwards. If you think about it, we do this in English all the time. We do this in English all the time where we're like, oh yeah, I couldn't sleep much last night because I had a headache, you know? we flip this order all the time in English anyways, so it's not something that should be entirely new to you. In spoken language, things are always more flexible. Keep that in mind. Just remember that the kara or the node is basically always attached to the reason or to the cause. But I think thanks in advance for my pace, I'm too worried. Yeah, don't worry too much about it. I think, and are you native from Japan? No, I'm not native. I'm not a native speaker. I just learned Japanese for a pretty long time. Just keep in mind that not understanding everything the first time around is okay. That's not really what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming to give you like the 60-75%, and then maybe you do it again and you get to like 80%. That would be great already. And then you go from there. How would you write? I joined your Discord. How would I write what? Oh, I joined your Discord. Oh, usually you would say something like Discord に参加しました. 参加する. So you have this word 参加する. 参加. 参加 here. Participation, joining, adhering. And then this is a pseudo verb, so you can say something like Discord に参加. Is it 3 lines? Yeah. 参加しました. しました. Discord に参加しました. That's like the easiest. Can you not simply use 入る? Discord に入った. Yeah, you can say that too. Discord に入った. Yeah, that should work too. Discord に入った. Yeah, I entered your Discord. I joined your Discord. Both of these I think should work just fine. But I think 参加する is like a bit nicer in these cases, but it doesn't really matter. I think it's both. 加入した. You wouldn't use 加えて. Well, 加わる. Let me see. 加わる or 加える. 加える, well, first of all, 加える is transitive, right? So you have to be careful. 加える. If you use 加える, it is transitive. Oh, actually, I should probably also end the lesson. This is the end of the lesson. I'm already like drifting into my tangents, but I should end the lesson properly. Don't worry, I'll still keep streaming and answer the question. However, I will end the recording here so that the people of YouTube don't need to bear my tangents for too long. And also, it's been like an hour, and I tend to try and keep these like an hour long. So, thank you very much if you're watching this on YouTube, and I'll see you next lesson when we're probably going to talk about transitivity. I should probably get to that. It's about time, because I keep talking about it anyways. So there you go, that was compound sentences.